Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers here in Korea and around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Sunday, April 20th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. The death toll from the Sewol-ho ferry sinking rose to 36 overnight. 266 remain unaccounted for, but hopes now of finding any survivors are extremely dim, with divers admitting it'll be more of a recovery operation from now. Of the 76 people on board, 174 had been rescued immediately after the accident, including 20 of the 30 crew members. Relatives have begun providing DNA samples to help identify the dead. Officials say it may take 2 months to salvage the capsized ferry from the sea floor. With more details on the work of divers around the capsized vessel, we are joined by Connie Lee in the news centre. Connie, the death toll rose overnight. Fill us in.
Mark, the death toll now stands at 36, with the latest bodies coming from inside the ferry. Late yesterday, just before midnight, divers were able to successfully break through windows between the 3rd and 4th floor of the sunken vessel and retrieve 3 bodies. Officials say the bodies are of 3 males, all from Danwon High School. Now, they were the same bodies that divers spotted earlier in the day but couldn't retrieve them then. Now, Mark, with the latest discovery, it's a grim new stage of search and rescue operations, but this could mean that the process of finding more bodies could speed up as divers are working on breaking through more windows.
Yes, and Connie, yesterday evening I hear other bodies were found just outside the sunken ferry. Tell us about that, and also tell us about the criminal investigation of the captain and crew.
Yes, Mark, well, 2 female bodies were discovered in the waters around the ferry yesterday evening. And to the latest in the investigation of the crew members who are now in custody over this ferry disaster, new details emerged that the 3rd mate, the young 25-year-old, who was at the helm of the ship when it sank, was steering the vessel into unfamiliar, challenging waters. Known by her surname Pak, she only had 6 months of experience, and prosecutors say she had never navigated through the waters where the ferry crashed. Investigators are now focusing on the sharp turn the vessel took before it started listing. They're also looking into whether or not an evacuation order was properly sent out. Also, the captain of the ship, Lee Jun-suk, is charged with 5 violations, and if convicted, he could face up to life in prison. Mark.
Yes, Connie, and we also hear that the operator of the Sewol-ho ferry, the Chung Hae-jin Marine Company, is also under probe. Tell us more about that.
Yes, well, investigators have found that the company has an awful safety record. Files show the company has had accidents stemming from engine trouble or collisions on a regular basis every 2 to 3 years. Now, its most recent accident was just 3 weeks ago, Mark, involving a collision of its passenger ship and a fishing boat during thick fog conditions. In that case, though, all 141 passengers escaped injury or death. Now, records also show the company failing to properly communicate to passengers and accept responsibility for mechanical failures. Back to you, Mark.
Yes, the company certainly has a lot of serious questions to answer for. Thank you very much, Connie. Now, for details on the ongoing search and rescue operation going on down in Pengmok-hang Port and the rest of the latest news, Arirang News' Song Ji-sun joins us in the studio. So, Ji-sun, the families of the missing had another sleepless and very tough night last night.
Morning, Mark. I assume a lot of people, including myself, whether they were directly related with the victims of the missing or not, have spent the last few nights awake, waiting for rescue updates and praying for the survival of the missing. Now we're into the 5th day of operations, but efforts continue around the clock, with authorities using flare bombs to cast light on the dark ocean. The divers did make some progress after first saying that they've seen 3 bodies in the ferry Friday afternoon. At around 11:50 p.m. last night, rescue team did succeed in entering the Sewol-ho ferry by breaking the window. Now, a few minutes after they retrieved 3 male bodies, and early this morning, all 3 were identified as students of Danwon High School.
It's very sad. Our hearts go out to their families there. And how about the relatives waiting at the Jindo Indoor Auditorium? I hear they are very weak. They haven't eaten. They haven't slept for days. What's their condition like?
Exactly. Now we can only imagine the pain they're going through after nights of waiting and days for the survival of their very beloved children. Now, after the 3 bodies were discovered from within the ferry Saturday morning, parents of the missing rushed the port to identify whether they were the victims were their children. Now, their disappointment and despair soon uproared into anger, and dozens of them attempted to travel to Seoul this morning to try and get into the presidential office of Cheongwade. They wanted to demand the pace of the operation be picked up with a better organized protocol system. But the police have reportedly blocked them from leaving the auditorium. Now, their concern is also a big concern, as they have spent sleepless nights under intense stress, most of them missing their meals, crying and praying. Several have already been hospitalized, and many have fainted while crying and are very fragile both physically and mentally at this moment.
You can see on the video there that they certainly are extremely emotional and tired, and their opinions have varied on what to do with the ferry, whether to lift it out or not.
Exactly. Now, what we should also put into account at this point is that the Seoul ferry has completely sunk underwater as of Friday. Now, the volume of air pocket is also calculated to reduce as the ship sinks deeper down due to the pressure, further risking the chance of survival of those who may be waiting for rescue inside the ferry. While families of the missing still put rescue operation first in priority, it's reported that the families are divided on when to lift the vessel using cranes. Authorities have announced that they will not go ahead with the process without the full consent of the families of the missing. To minimize the risk of bodies drifting too far away, they have set up nets around the area to actually following requests by the family members.
Okay, Ji-sun, a lot of work still to be done there salvaging this ferry. Thank you very much for your report.
I'll be back at the top of the hour.
Thank you. Now, one of the receiving hospitals for the victims of the ferry sinking is the Mokpo Hanguk Hospital in Korea's southern Jeollanam-do province. We have Arirang reporter Lee Seung-jae down there for us. Seung-jae, what's the latest?
Now, Mark, so far 29 passengers have arrived at the Mokpo Hanguk Hospital, where 11 are currently being treated for injuries. 8 have since gone home, and 10 have unfortunately arrived at the scene deceased. So it has been a very difficult time for the family, friends, and the staff members here at the hospital. Now, of course, of the 11 who are currently being treated for injuries, it seems like post-traumatic stress is a big issue, and given these current circumstances, and the hospital is providing them with all the psychiatric therapy. Now, as of 10 p.m. last night, that's about 8 hours ago, the hospital told us that any further passengers found will no longer be transferred to here, but they will open up again this morning for the victims.
Well, it's good to see that the survivors are being well taken care of. And I understand you had a chance to speak with one of the survivors.
That's right, Mark. Now, I had a chance to speak to one of the survivors, and, obviously the conversation didn't last long given the fact that the events of the day was still fresh on his mind, so it was very difficult for him to talk about. Now, he is currently being treated for broken ribs, which he states is nothing compared to the others. Now, of course, while he was one of the lucky passengers on the ferry, he stated that his wife is still missing, and that's why he decided to stay at this hospital. Now, he said that as soon as he gets the green light to leave the hospital, he plans to go over to the site hoping for some good news. And here at the Mokpo Hanguk Hospital, if we do have survivors on this 5th day since the accident, ambulances and a helicopter will be on standby at all times. And until then, I'll continue to give you updates from the Mokpo Hanguk Hospital. Back to you.
Thanks, Sanjay. It seems like a long shot now, but let's hope for some good news today. Now, the bitter sorrow and anger of the families of the missing passengers has been stoked by the achingly slow progress of the rescue operation. But it seems there weren't that many options at any point of the operation. Experts say some of the suggestions raised by the families and the general public would have actually lessened the chance of finding survivors even more. Park Ji-won reports.
Fast currents, adverse weather conditions, including rain and strong gusts of wind. Rescue divers' attempts to enter into the sunken ferry have failed repeatedly since the search and rescue operations began 3 days ago. Rescue teams have opted to search for survivors, with divers using underwater paths to get into the vessel. Some have raised questions whether drilling a hole directly into the vessel to pull out any possible survivors might have been a better option. But experts say that was not a viable option. They say if there are any survivors inside the now sunken SOHN ferry, they're using air pockets to stay alive. If a hole had been drilled from the outside, it would have caused water to rush in, collapsing those air pockets. They also point out that welding necessary to make the hole would have generated carbon monoxide within the ship, which could have been fatal as well.
Carbon monoxide poisoning could have caused a bigger accident. It's extremely rare to execute rescue operations by drilling a hole into a ship.
To help search divers in the area, some have proposed setting up large commercial ships, such as oil tankers, nearby to block rapid tidal currents. But experts say this is also not an option because the direction of tides change 4 times a day, meaning deploying just 1 or 2 wouldn't help.
At least 3 ships need to be deployed to safely surround the sunken ship to prevent currents, which would take at least 6 months.
Then what about lifting the ship by cranes? Refloating the ship, experts say, will take at least a few weeks, which would be far too late for any survivors if there are any on board. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
As the search and rescue hinges on diving operations, the Coast Guard and the Navy aren't the only ones plunging themselves into the cold, choppy waters. Private rescue divers volunteered their services to find a lifeline to survivors. Kim Min-ji reports on the collective effort.
Inside this vessel, rescue divers are setting up plans to enter rough waters at the scene of the accident in search of survivors. These divers are part of a private rescue team that has volunteered their time to help out.
The conditions are much more favorable compared to yesterday. There won't be major difficulties in diving today.
These private rescue divers are experienced in such matters, being involved in operations like the Korean warship Cheonan crisis 4 years ago. Although they haven't found any survivors on the SOHN ferry yet, they haven't given up hope.
We could recover bodies after air was pumped into the vessel. They were visible to us.
However, the harsh conditions at sea are hampering their attempts.
If I stretch my hand out, I can barely see my fingertips. If we're over 7 meters underwater, we can't see anything ahead of us. It's completely dark.
With hope diminishing in the nation of finding any survivors, these private rescue teams are doing what they can to encourage the victims' families, to show them that everything that can be done is being done to save their loved ones. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, the entire nation is united to try and help the families who are on their toes for more information about their missing loved ones. Volunteers are at the site with the family members offering necessities and just plain encouragement. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
As days pass by, families who long for their loved ones are growing wary. In times of crisis like these, a warm meal and a helping hand are a great help. Volunteers from various relief organizations came to Shindo Island, where the sunken ferry is located and where family members are gathered to find more about their missing family members.
A lot of families came rushing to site when they heard about the ferry incident. So we're trying to provide necessities while they wait to hear news of their loved ones.
The health of the families is deteriorating as time goes by, as rescue operations are further being delayed. Medicine and medical supplies are running short.
We'll provide medicine and medical supplies until the crisis recedes. We're planning to have a fundraiser so that we can keep renewing the supplies.
The nation is being united in times of crisis. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
We now turn to our Connie Kim, who's standing by at Korea University Ansan Hospital, where most of the high school students injured in the accident are being treated. Some of the deceased have been received there also. Connie, what's the atmosphere like there?
Hi, Mark. I'm standing in front of Korea University Ansan Hospital. Now, at this hospital, a total of 6 of the deceased have been arrived here. Now, today, no bodies will be boarding out here at this hospital, but about an hour ago, the boarding has begun in 4 other hospitals in this Ansan region. 7 more will be borne out today. 5 of those students from Danwon High School, where more than 320 students from that school were on board the ill-fated ferry. Now, today is the first boarding of students, so it's going to be yet another extremely sad day for the city of Ansan. Students saying their last goodbyes also look extremely upset and unstable, some visibly trembling with shock and emotion. Following yesterday's news that 3 more deceased had been found in the waters of Chindo Island, we're not sure yet whether they'll be transported here, but we'll keep you updated.
Yes, the students look like they must be going through hell, having to say goodbye to their classmates there. What about the survivors there receiving medical treatment?
Well, the hospital is definitely working around the clock with doctors and therapists, helping survivors, especially students who have suffered such a traumatizing accident. Now, to continuously check students' mental stabilities, doctors and therapists are holding one-on-one counseling sessions throughout the day. And with more than half of the students very unwell, the hospital has restricted contact to students besides their family members. 7 of them are known to be suffering from extreme depression. The hospital has currently strengthened securities, deploying security guards to protect these students from getting exposed to media. Well, that's all I have for you, Mark, right now, but I'll definitely keep you updated throughout the day.
Thank you very much, Connie. Let's hope the media respects the hospital and the students' wishes and lets them just grieve in peace. Now, a candlelight vigil took place for the 2nd straight night in the city of Ansan on Saturday, where the 325 students who were on the ferry went to school. Our SOHN Jung-in reports.
The laughter and lively spirit that once filled this area has been replaced with silence and sorrow. A candlelight rally hosted by Danwon High School took place at Arirang Park in Ansan on Saturday, where people united in one thought, hopes of finding the survivors safe and sound. The event was scheduled to start at 8 p.m., but mourners arrived even earlier than expected, with more people joining the rally as the time went by. It followed a similar event Friday at Danwon High School, with students and parents sending condolences to the victims and praying for the safe return of the missing. Meanwhile, the news of their candlelight spread, with people from cities all over the nation passing on their thoughts and prayers through other vigils. Over in Busan, Buddhist monks held a candlelight vigil ahead of the opening of the Lotus Lantern Festival in Yongdusan Park. Most spring festivals, which were due kick off in April and May, have been cancelled or postponed out of respect for the victims of the sunken vessel. Everyone in Korea continues to hold out hope for any sign of good news, for any sign that more survivors will be found. SOHN Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, the communications officer of the ferry said he had to consult a safety manual to know what to do when the Sewol-ho hit trouble, something that clearly shouldn't be the case. The other crew members also didn't know how to organize the passengers and get them ready for evacuation, as they had not received sufficient emergency training. Hwang Jie has more.
This is a huge American cruise ship that can carry thousands of passengers. Before leaving port, everyone gathers on the deck for mandatory safety education. They try on life vests and learn how to use them in emergency situations. Passengers also learn how to stay alive if they find themselves in the water, how to get on rescue boats, and even how to use flare guns. The safety education goes on for about an hour. Such efforts come on the heels of major maritime accidents, like the one that capsized the Italian cruise ship Costa Concordia in 2012.
While accidents are rare, it's important that cruise lines offer their passengers and crews the highest levels of safety and responsiveness in the event that something does go wrong.
Although Korean ships have safety manuals on board, safety seminars such as the ones that take place in the U.S. and other countries are rare. To prevent further cases like the Seolho, experts say it's critical that authorities take maritime safety issues more seriously and put necessary regulations in place. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Now, as officials continue their investigation into what caused the capsize, a similar incident that occurred in Japan 5 years ago has come to light. Experts say similarities in the two ships could help solve the case. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
The capsizing of Japanese ferry Arirang is gaining attention more than 4 years after the incident due to its similarities with Korea's Seolho ferry. The 7,000-ton vessel was stranded near Japan's Mie Prefecture on November 13, 2009, after a strong current slammed into the ship's left, forcing 2,400 tons worth of cargo to shift to one side. The vessel lost its restoring force and, as a result, capsized. Fortunately, the ship was carried to the nearest shore by tide, and all 29 passengers and crew members on board were safely rescued. The Arirang and Korea's Seolho ferry resemble each other in many ways. The Arirang was operated by Marue Ferry, the company that sold the Seolho ferry to Korea. The two ships were also built by the same builder, the Japanese ship 1 year after the Seolho ferry was completed in 1995. The two weighed almost the same and traveled at similar speeds. Experts say the ships are nearly identical in capacity and operation methods, and the lead-up to their capsizing is much the same. The similarities are fueling hope of clues into what caused the Seolho ferry to list and sink. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
I'm Lee Ji-hyun with a check on the weather conditions in Jindo area and around the country. Well, as we all know, the weather conditions in Jindo and seas haven't been cooperating so well. And as for today, temperatures should be similar to yesterday under mostly to partly cloudy skies with possible AM drizzles. But unlike yesterday, things will get better as the day goes on. Winds and waves are expected to die down a bit. And as far as the tides go on, this is when the calmest tidal currents occur today, and flow speed should decrease during these times, and hopefully these indicated times provide better opportunity for rescue operations. And as for the rest of the country, we'll have a tad warmer afternoon highs compared to yesterday under mostly to partly sunny skies, and Jeju should receive sporadic showers throughout the day. Well, that's all the updates that I have for you at this hour, and I'll be back with more updates after 8.
Those are the updates we have for you for this hour. A special edition of Korea Today is coming up in about 30 minutes' time, and our news team will be continuing our comprehensive coverage on the ongoing search and rescue efforts throughout the day. Goodbye.